Thank you. It's really my pleasure and privilege to be here. I want to thank in particular Ambassador Roos and his wife Susan. We have the privilege of having Ambassador Roos on our board of directors, and I'm delighted to be here. I suspect many of my fellow Americans here are Japanophiles. My wife and I went to Kyoto on our honeymoon. We were just there this summer. My son studied Japanese in Fukuoka. I see the stand from Fukuoka out there. He'd be pleased to know that. So Japan has played a very important role in my life and my home, and I'm really honored to be here with you today. And what I'm going to talk about today is technology. Not surprisingly, here we are in the home of one of the most dynamic places in the world with respect to technology. I have the privilege of actually having been here since there was no Silicon Valley. I was here in 1972 before there was a Silicon Valley, and I've seen it all develop, and I'll talk a little bit about what some of the implications of that are as we go forward. But the fundamental idea that I want to speak about is one big thing that is coming, and it's in the title of my talk. The technology awakens our world. We are about to go through a huge technological discontinuity. And as I look around the room, most of us have been through a few, the smartphone, the birth of the internet, and so on. But we're now about to go through another enormous transformation. And that is that what we're going to see everywhere is virtually every human artifact that we've created is about to behave as if it were alive. There will be embedded sensors, communication, and in technology, in every environment, in artificial intelligence, in every appliance, everything that we make, every car, every home, every office, everything is about to come alive. And the world around us will be surrounding us with capabilities as if it were alive. So that's what I'm going to talk about, is what does that mean, and where does it take us, and what does that imply for things like our economy and jobs. So I want to begin with a bit of history. As I said, we've been through a number of discontinuities, and I began my career just up the road here at a place called Stanford Research Institute. By the way, I actually had a job before that. I'm actually an astronautical engineer by education. I'm actually a rocket scientist. It's the only advantage of my degree. I actually get to say that I am one. But before that, I actually worked on Apollo, and for those of you who don't believe it, we did go to the moon. Well, I have a third of Americans don't believe that. Is there anybody in the room who doesn't believe? Okay, good. Well, let me say this. I was there when it went up. I wasn't there when it came down, so I can't be sure they came back, but I'm pretty sure they left. But I really began my professional life at Stanford Research Institute. And by then, when I arrived there, we were already beginning the second great discontinuity in technology. The first was, of course, the birth of the mainframe computer, the beginning of the 1950s. Indeed, my father, who was a young engineer at the time, worked for RCA. Some of you will remember a company called RCA, and he actually was working on components for the first computer at Princeton that John von Neumann was building. So I saw the first computers being built as a child, and when I got to school and became an engineering student, my first computer was an IBM System 360, about half the size of this room. But by the time I got to SRI, things were beginning to change. And when I was at SRI, there were several very important developments happening in parallel. One was something we called the Human Augmentation Lab, and that's where a man named Doug Engelbart invented the mouse, the interactive computer screen. We had the Artificial Intelligence Lab, where we saw the first beginnings of AI, and we had the Robotics Lab, where we had the first automated robots. And in fact, you can see the first robot in the Smithsonian. It's called Shaky. It was the first automated vehicle, actually ran around on the campus at SRI. But among the most important things that was happening at SRI was that SRI was node number 2 of what was called then the ARPANET that became the Internet. And indeed, I was one of the first users. I got online starting in 1972. And I've been online ever since. So I'm one of the few hundred people probably in the world who can actually say that I've been online for about 40-some years. Now we move forward a little bit into the future, and we see the birth of the personal computer. And that was really the discontinuity that most of us experienced first. right? That we had a computer in our own hands in the 1980s, an Apple II, an Osborne, a K-Pro, an HP, an IBM. These were the devices that suddenly we had computing in our own hands, and it was a real transformation. And that was the beginning of the wave that we are now beginning to see. And the next was, of course, the takeoff of the web in the 1990s, when we started to get the internet taking off, not just simply as a means for academic communication, but for all kinds of activity, economic activity, business activity, educational activity, scientific activity, and political activity, all beginning to take off in the 1980s and 90s on the web. But now we're about to go through the next major discontinuity that is just happening. And it is the intersection of enormous amounts of data, sensors everywhere, the ability to analyze that data in real time and apply the beginnings of artificial intelligence. And let me be clear about what I mean by AI in this case. There's big AI and little AI. Big AI is science fiction. As mentioned, I helped write a film called Minority Report. My first film was a film called War Games back in 1982. Some of you may have seen it as a kid. Yeah, woo, yeah. Matthew actually played me. That was me in the movie. I hacked a BBN computer in 1973 and found the guidance programs for the US missiles. So that was the basis of the film. But in that film, we actually showed a computer learning. A computer called Whopper had to learn how to play a game. It was the beginnings of machine learning. And so today, what we're seeing is a lot of concern about artificial intelligence, i.e., are the computers going to take over? Are we going to have super brains? Are we going to have the Terminator, HAL 9000 from 2001, et cetera? You don't need to worry. The truth is that it's a very, very long way off. In fact, this summer I had the privilege of debating Stephen Hawking on the subject at an event in Europe. And the truth is that we really don't understand the brain. The US has an initiative that I participate in on the future of the human brain that's a 30-year project, the first 10 years of which are mapping a mouse brain. So we're a long way from being able to actually be able to put a brain on silicon. So you don't need to worry about the robots coming for you anytime soon. But there's little AI. And little AI is little bits of intelligence applied to any business process to take the friction out so you don't have to think about it. Now, some of you will be users of Amazon one-click, right? And one-click is a little bit of AI. Not brilliance. This is not giant intelligence. But, you know, I'm a book junkie. I love books. Amazon's got me cold. They send me recommendations. I want the book. Click. It's mine. So what's happening in the background is a little robot clerk is reading my email and saying, yes, it is Schwartz. His credit card is up to date. The email address is correct. We can complete the transaction. And that happens in a fraction of a second. I didn't have to think about it. Recently, I arrived at the Four Seasons in Toronto. Now, I happen to be a regular user of the Four Seasons. I travel a lot. I have their app. I'm one of their beta customers. And I arrived, and what happened, as I walk in, the bellman says, Mr. Schwartz, you're in 212. Here's your key. Go on up. No registration, no friction. Essentially, nothing got between me and what I needed to do. It was friction-free. That's little AI. The computer recognized me in the company, registered me, took care of all that. I didn't go to the registration desk. But the best example actually happened with my Apple Watch. So this is a little watch that Salesforce gave me for something I did. And last fall, I don't know how many of you saw the film The Martian. How many of you saw The Martian? Lots of you, right? So The Martian, you can imagine for somebody like me, The Martian was heaven, right? I mean, I really wanted to be Matt Damon, the astronaut on Mars. My wife wished I was Matt Damon, but as it happened, I was going to interview the author on stage here in San Francisco. He actually lives not far from here, a guy named Andy Weir. And I said to her, look, you haven't seen the movie or read the book, you need to see the movie. So let's go to the movies this afternoon. So I went online and I ordered the tickets for the movie. And then I didn't think about it. And about 5 minutes before the movie, my watch buzzed. And about 45 minutes before the movie, my watch buzzed. And up on the watch came the sentence, Peter, you need to leave for the movies in 10 minutes and there's no traffic between you and the theater. So what happened? Well, what happened is that my laptop read my email and figured out I was going to the movies, sent a message to my iPhone, which then said, all right, I'm going to check Google Maps to find out where the theater is, check the traffic, and then my iPhone realized that the best place to communicate with me was my watch, and then sent a perfect English sentence to my watch telling me I needed to leave in 10 minutes. That's little AI. That's a little bit of intelligence operating in the background. I didn't have to think about it. There was no friction involved in it. I didn't configure any software. It all happened automatically without my having to do anything, because it knew my preferences, knew where I lived, knew what I was doing, and so on. And that's the world we're now moving into, where all those things in the background will be providing services for you real time based on the devices that you have and how your preferences and the things that you actually want to do. So that's the kind of core theme I'm going to talk about, is what does all that mean? Now, when you think about the future, basically it's challenging. There are often big uncertainties. So today, even looking forward, there are huge uncertainties. You think about the problem, for example, you show up there, the forecast of US mobile subscribers in 1980. It's not well known that it was actually AT&T that invented the mobile phone. Before that, there were mobile phones. They were called car phones, and rich executives had a car phone in the dashboard of their car, or generals and admirals, but most of us didn't. Maybe you, an ambassador, might have a car phone, but the rest of us, nah. Well, AT&T invented the cell phone, and they wanted to assess what was the future market. So they went to McKinsey, and McKinsey did a study, and they came up and said, by around 2000, you might sell 900,000 a year. Oops. The right answer was 100 million. Well, were they stupid? No, they were not. They weren't stupid. They were unimaginative. To really see the possibilities, if you just simply extrapolate history, all you're going to get is a bit more of the same. When you have a product that changes the game like the cell phone did, you have to really be imaginative. Now, if they had imagined that everybody had one in their pocket because it was going to get cheap and easy to use, they might have come up with something like 100 million. They could also have come up with the opposite. You may remember there was a time not long ago when people thought that cell phones fried your brain, right? So it could have been 0 if that was true. So the forecast could have been anywhere from 0 to 1 million to 100 million. So there are big uncertainties still out there in the future around data. How will we actually use all that data? Can we actually make the data connect? Around the user experience, is it easy to use or is it very difficult to use? I mean, for example, the other day I renewed my Economist subscription. I love The Economist, great magazine, but their website sucks, right? And if you read it, you know they have not yet figured out the web the way Wired has. But it took me an hour and a half to renew my subscription because I wanted to make one change, right? Terrible experience. Well, if people have lots of experiences like that, it ain't going to take off. So that's another key uncertainty. And then really, how good is the AI itself? Does it actually yield the kind of recommendations and suggestions we have? So we have to be imaginative and we have to be rigorous in our thinking simultaneously about the future of where we're going. Now, the truth is that for the next 5 years, this device in one of my pockets, yes, this one right here, is really still the personal computer for everyone. This was really Steve Jobs' most important invention, the supercomputer in your pocket, right? And of course, to think about this as a telephone really misses what it is. It's really a hub for services of all sorts. And it will be the hub of a great variety of services that are embedded in the environment. So for example, we show up there already the Fitbit. How many of you are wearing something like a Fitbit? Right, so you got a number of people who are trying to be in good shape, right? This is good. John's got one, Susan's got one. I use my Apple Watch. My wife is a serious exercise person, right? And it's actually making a difference in people's lives already. So you start thinking, right? So she's, it also plays out on your smartphone, right? It shows you what you've done. But more importantly, it shows you what your friends do. And of course, she's very competitive. So if her friends have hit their 10,000, she's in trouble if she hasn't. So it's 10 o'clock at night, getting ready to bed. She's in her bathroom, back and forth, getting that last. And any of you have it, you know that buzz when you hit 10,000, right? You're there. So you got to hit those 10,000. Well, this is not just idle curiosity. In fact, before too long, my wife went to the doctor 2 weeks ago. And the doctor said to her, well, Kathleen, I'd like to be on your Fitbit data set feed. I want to see on my phone how you're doing. And the same is going to happen to all of you. Soon, your doctor will say to you, you know, I want you to wear a health monitor because I want to know how you're sleeping, how you're eating, what your weight is like, what your exercise is like, and so on. So it will become just universal. Everybody does it. That little square below that, that A is an automatic. That's a Fitbit for cars. You put that in your car and you get the same data that the company gets, the automatic, the mechanic gets, and you get an enormous amount of information if you're a car person. Well, if you're the other people who want that, of course, is your insurance company. They want to know what's happening with your car. Up to the right, that is the Nest controller. You'll control every device in your home with your smartphone. But your home insurance company will also want to know. So we're moving into this environment where a variety of service providers that we have will want to be connected to you, want to know how you're doing with your home, your health, your car, etc. And this will be the platform for all of those services for the next 4 or 5 years. There'll be other forms of this. There'll be wearable devices and so on. But the smartphone is really the center of where we're going to be. Now, the other thing that's happening with respect to these devices is we're getting new kinds of interfaces, new ways to gather that information and see it. One that's going to be very important to business is augmented reality. And augmented reality is information that you put into your field of vision so that you can do something about it. Now, in fact, Japan produced the very first augmented reality product, Pokemon Go. Right? Any Pokemon Go collectors here? I have a 25-year-old Pokemon hunter. I learned from him that there are Pokemon living on our terrace. But it was an amazing phenomenon, right? Using your smartphone only, you could walk around and see the Pokemon and collect them, right? Find your trainer, do all that stuff, right? You know, I'm intimately familiar with Pikachu. Having said that, it gives you a hint of what's to come. Imagine people wearing glasses where they get information in their field of vision. Now, for some, for game playing and all that, it's a curiosity. But suppose you are doing a sophisticated technical task like repairing a very sophisticated pump in a pipeline, right? You need information, you need data. Now, you could bring a stack of books with you with all that information, or you could be wearing a hard hat helmet with a screen that provides all that information to you real time in the way that you need it when you need it. There are many, many applications in the worlds of medicine, construction, engineering, science, etc., and game playing too, where augmented reality will be very important. Some of you will have tried the Google Glass, which was one of the first products, and it was kind of funky when it first came out. You had to squint and look like that. Well, it's now getting much better. Next year, they'll have a new version out. We're working with them, Salesforce on Google Glass. So this is going to be a very important technology coming along right now, and will get better and better and better. Behind that is what we've called their haptic and tactile. That means touch and feel. The gentleman in that picture is a neurobiologist who just moved to the Bay Area from Baylor University by the name of David Eagleman. And David is a specialty in something called synesthesia. That is how one sense gets transposed into another, how you can see sounds and hear colors. Now, usually this is a problem for people. It's a disorder that gets treated, and that's what David learned about. But it can be an advantage if you're blind or if you're deaf. Because, in fact, what David has developed is that vest that he's wearing. And that vest translates visual imagery or audio imagery into vibration. And it turns out that the brain can be trained over about a 3-month period to see sound or hear colors. And basically the vibration enables you to see or hear in ways that you couldn't before. And this is now going into production right now. This is not distant future. It's happening right now. The research is done. They're starting to sell these devices, and we'll start training people shortly in being able to see and hear when they couldn't before. But the ultimate interface is the one to the right, brain control. And that is the ability to have the brain control the device directly. Today, we read that from the outside. That's what you see there. And you can do very simple things. When that young woman there blinks, the image on the screen blinks. But in fact, what we're really doing is moving much faster than that already in direct neural control of devices. And the first example of those devices is prosthetics. Sadly, as a result of the wars that we've been in for the last 20 years, we have a lot of young soldiers coming home without limbs. And so the U.S. has invested an enormous amount of money in building advanced prosthetic arms and legs. And they're now beginning to succeed. That is where the brain can control the legs, the arms, the hands directly from implants. There's a physicist, a biophysicist at MIT, Hugh Herr, at the Media Lab. And Hugh had a climbing accident when he was a teenager and lost the lower half of both of his legs. He went on to study biophysics and has built the most advanced prosthetics in the world. In fact, if you visit with him, which I have, he has all kinds of different legs. He has legs for running, he has legs for climbing, legs for dancing. He has these cool chromed legs for going out at night, straight out of Star Wars. But what he likes to say is that the upper half of his body is deteriorating at the same rate as the rest of us, but the lower half is improving on a 3-month innovation cycle. So, in fact, what we're also now beginning to see is direct control of devices, first on our body, but imagine when you can control the car, when you can control the television screen, the computer, the airplane directly. And that's not 25 years off. That's going to begin in the next 5 years. So we're seeing lots of ways we're going to begin to see new ways of controlling technology. Now, what's going to happen is we'll see these sensors and intelligence embedded in every aspect of life. Your home will be alive. Your car will be alive. It will be a self-driving car. We're moving to the era of the self-driving car. The workplace will be connected in every way. And then actually out in the city, everywhere you go, you will be connected. And there will be embedded services providing service to you. So let me show you what a day in the life might be like. Now, that's the Amazon Echo there. And the Amazon Echo is the current state of the art of voice interaction. If you don't have one, and if you're into this stuff, get one and try it. It's worth fooling around with. Everybody's going to have one. You'll see it shortly. Lots of different manufacturers, but the current version is Amazon Echo. And if you have an Echo, you know you have to call it Alexa. Eventually, you'll be able to have a different name. So my favorite assistant is a woman named Lynn. So I'm going to call mine Lynn, not Alexa, right? So Lynn has learned a lot about me. It has engaged in machine learning. It's got a bit of artificial intelligence. It knows what I like, what I don't like. And it knew last night from my schedule I was going to be up really late, right? Watching the election returns and crying by the morning. And so, in fact, Alexa this morning wakes me up. Peter, it's time to wake up. Peter, it's time to wake up. Get up, you idiot. But Alexa has learned, of course, over the years, what I like to know in the morning. Alexa knows that first thing I want to know, how's my son in Boston doing? I want to know what my first appointments are in the morning. I want to know some of the important news stories. How badly did the 49ers lose yesterday? All those kinds of things I need to know first thing in the morning. So Alexa gets me up. I get going. Now, the first thing as it happens in my day, I'm going to a meeting with some colleagues in a self-driving car. Alexa calls me the car and lets the car know where I'm going because Alexa knows my schedule. We get in the car. My colleagues are with me. And I say, oh, Alexa, because, of course, now Alexa's in the car with me. Or Lynn, pardon me. Lynn, you're in the car with me. I want to see the slides for the presentation for the meeting. We're going to go see a customer. And I want to change one of the slides. I want to raise the numbers by 50%. Can we do that while we're on the move? No problem. Lynn tells me we'll fix it right here as we're going along. So my assistant is there in the car with me. I then, after the meeting, go to my office. And, of course, Lynn is there in the walls with me. I say to Lynn, my electronic assistant, oh, would you, by the way, change the slide order for this afternoon's presentation. I want to have the second slide be fifth and the fifth slide being second. And, in fact, drop the third slide altogether. Oh, and, I forgot. Lynn, I'm going to Munich 2 days from now. I'd like you to get me a flight, the one on Lufthansa that I took the last time. And I'd like to have that same hotel. I've forgotten the name in the hotel. And the same driver we had the last time. You know all that, don't you, Lynn? And, of course, Lynn says, yes, I'll take care of it all for you. Now comes the end of the day. I'm ready to go home. I want to go for a run, get a little exercise. So I put on my augmented reality goggles, and I'm out for a run. Now, normally I run with a friend, but my friend is out of town, so his electronic virtual image appears in my virtual scene, and it lets him know that I'm out for a run. And, of course, he appears in my earphone and says, hey, Schwartz, you're not going to beat my time from yesterday. You better get going. And, of course, my augmented reality, still Lynn, she's telling me, okay, by the way, there's a detour 3 blocks up. You may want to go around the block that way. And, oh, by the way, look, there's some really new blossoms on that tree out there you may want to check out. And, oh, by the way, your heart rate is doing just fine, thank you. So Alexa, Lynn has now gotten me through the day. I get home at the end of the day, and it turns out, rather than watch TV, I actually want to do a little bit of learning. Why? Well, as it happens, and this is true, I'm a director of a cancer research company here in the Bay Area that studies breast cancer. And I don't know anything about biology. I'd be a lousy director because Everything worth knowing about biology was discovered after I left school in 1968. We knew there was DNA, but none of the rest of this stuff in modern molecular biology. So my deal with the CEO is before every board meeting, he has to teach me some molecular biology so I know what's going on. Okay, so I call up Cyrus, send him a note, say, Cyrus, it's time for you to have a board meeting tomorrow. You got to give me a lesson. So we go into a shared virtual reality space, what we call the Internet of Experience, i.e. we share a virtual environment. We put on our helmets, and now we're in that shared environment where he can show me a simulation of how this molecule, when you rotate it this way, will go into the tumor, but if you rotate the molecule this way, it won't connect to the tumor. And he gives me the information I need to be able to make good judgments in the board meeting tomorrow in a shared virtual reality. This is a day in the life 5 years from now. This is what life will be like when everything around us is alive, when we engage with everything real time, anywhere, everywhere, with voice, and where it's providing all of those services that we need to use. Now, today, how many of you have an executive assistant? Yeah, a few of you, right? The rest of you actually have to work. I have 4 people whose job it is to make me look good. They did all these slides. But in fact, most of us don't. So what's actually happening is that we are moving into this world where essentially everyone will have an electronic assistant that will be embedded in their environment, whether it is Microsoft produces it, or Amazon, or Google, or Facebook. All of these are versions of the personal assistant, and it will have an enormous impact on the productivity of the service sector. We invest a lot in capital and manufacturing, but not nearly as much in services. This is how we're going to restore economic growth, by embedding an enormous amount of technology in the service sector where 70% of the workers work today. So this is a huge transformation even at a macro level. Now, the problem you have to do is to choose which of the ecosystems you're going to live in, Apple or Microsoft or Google or Facebook. These are all the Apple technologies, Apple devices, Apple Pay, Apple CarPlay, HomeKit, etc. All of these are devices that you have to live in. So today, it's a bit like the early days of personal computers, when a Microsoft machine would not communicate with an Apple and vice versa, where you have to use special software. So today, these live in different environments. But eventually, they will all interconnect, and we'll be able to make all these ecosystems connect to each other. I'm going to skip this in the interest of time. So as I said, we're investing a lot in artificial intelligence. We're going from that world where essentially all of our data was backward looking. That is, we drive into the future with only a rear view mirror. We have a picture of where we've been, but not where we're going. Today, we're just at the edge of modern diagnostics where we can see what's happening. But where the AI is really going is prediction. What's the next move? What's the next best offer? What's the next thing to do? And what should you do about it? Is that machine going to break, and how do you fix it? These are all companies that we've acquired in Salesforce to embed in our technology. We call it Einstein, and we're embedding intelligence in all of our products and services. Now, there's really a machine intelligence revolution going on. You can't read the names of this in this eye chart, but there are literally hundreds of companies in the startup field in this arena. When I look at the future of technology, I look at 3 things, 3 T's: tools, talent, and treasure. Is there some fundamental new set of tools that are opening up a new domain? And that is machine learning, and that's the new set of tools. Where's the talent going? Well, every bright kid coming out of Stanford, MIT, Cal, Carnegie Mellon is going to one of these startups. Where's the treasure? Where's the venture capital going? It's going here to lots of these startups. We have investments in over 20 of these. We've bought over a dozen ourselves. So what we're seeing is a very broad revolution across the frontier, lots and lots and lots of players. Many of these will fail, but a number of them are revolutionary, will change the world over the next coming decades. So we can be pretty confident that what we're seeing is intelligence applied to every function, every industry. I'm going to skip this. So where does this lead us to conclude in terms of work? Where is it going to happen to the future of business? Well, one of the dramatic things we've seen is a dramatic rise in the independent workforce. More and more people working independently, even older workers over 52. And so what we've seen is this dramatic rise of the independent workforce because business wants to be flexible, workers want flexibility, and now we have a new way of connecting them. That is, people with assets, time, bedrooms, cars, capability, and people who want to use those are now connected by new kinds of software platforms like Uber and Airbnb. And oh, by the way, PokeWalk, that's if you don't have time to go collect your own Pokemon, they'll do it for you. It's true. It's true. But the point is we're creating fundamental new business models of how we actually engage. This is the world of crowdsourcing, another new model. For example, GWIN is General Mills' innovation network, customers inventing new kinds of breakfast cereal. This is an outfit from here in Palo Alto called House. It's basically the website for people doing remodeling. All the content is sent by users. You post millions there of projects, bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms, and so on, with the contractors did it and the products that went into it, and anybody can see it. All they did was to create a platform where everybody could upload new information. New business models being created by this. And new forms of manufacturing, 3D printing. What we now have in Louisville is a company called Radius that, in fact, actually has a fast Radius, machines to make spare parts. They're sent out overnight at the UPS facility in Kentucky. One person runs 100 3D printers, a dramatic transformation. So is this going to eliminate all the jobs? No. This is a graph, this is where I want to end up. A lot of people worried about unemployment. This is tell you why you shouldn't be worried. This is a graph in the United States of the working age population actually employed from 1950 to 2016. That is the population 25 to 54, which is the great majority of workers. In 1950, with a US population of 160 million, essentially 60% of that population was in work. Today, with a population of 325 million, twice as many people, 80% is in work. In other words, during that period of time with 4 or 5 major technological transformations, we have been able to sustain the growth and employment throughout that. We've invented whole new industries. You think about the global travel industry. How many people today work in that travel industry, in hotels, in the Levi Stadium across there, the Great American Mall just down the road here, the airlines that brought you here, the rental cars? None of that existed in 1950. Right? Most people weren't traveling. There was a few rich businessmen, diplomats, etc., who were traveling. Now all of you did. Whole new industries rise to create employment. And that's what this graph is telling us, that what we're going to see is a continued development of new industries. Now, I'm going to just skip this in the interest of time here and end up with a quote. And it's a quote from Time magazine, from their special issue on joblessness. And let me just read it. Not just the number of jobs lost to more efficient machines, but automation may prevent the economy from creating enough new jobs. Automation is beginning to move in and eliminate service and office jobs. We should really be worried about the future, except for one thing. That's when it was published, 1961. That was from a Time magazine of 1961. I assume you're all unemployed, right? Right? Because those jobs didn't happen in 1965, 1975, 1985, 1995. We created more jobs. We more than doubled the number of people in employment after this statement was made. So all I want to say to you is the technology is transforming the world incredibly fast. We will need to adapt, learn, and relearn again and again how to use this technology. But from my point of view, it's one of the most optimistic forces in the world, going to make us much more productive, much healthier, give us long lives, and create vast new jobs that will be better than the jobs they're replacing. Thank you very much.